Welcome to Wild and Finally Fucking Free, the show for disruptors, rebels, and revolutionaries who know they're here to change the damn world. I'm Kylie Patchett, your voice and visibility catalyst, and here we dive into unapologetic truth, magnetic messaging, and visibility that actually feels good in your body, your bones, and your business. We share the stories of the out-of-the-box, neuro-sparkly, creative, witchy wild ones, rewriting how we live, love, learn, and lead. This isn't about being louder. It's about being rooted, resonant, and regulated so you can be real, raw, and ready to roar. If you're done contorting yourself to fit the mold and you're ready to own your voice, your power, and your place in the revolution, welcome home. Let's dive in. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. This is part 3 of a 3-part mini-series, where I'm introducing you to the anti-entrepreneurs that are learned limitation behavior patterns that can screw with your voice and visibility in the marketplace. If you haven't listened to parts 1 and 2, highly recommend you go back. These are like bite-sized episodes in this season, so I'm trying to not do huge, long 3-hour episodes like I used to. So the next pattern that we're going to meet, so the first 5 are in part 2. These are the last 4 patterns. So this is the Wannapreneur. So when I think about the energy of a Wannapreneur, this is the person who's all talky about having a business, but no walky. And I know that sounds very judgmental and blamey. I'm being deliberately provocative because if you have this pattern, when I talk like that, you're way like, oh, well, dear Lord, okay, that hurt, but I get it. And this is part of the like unapologetic truth talking, right? If you're someone who can spot patterns in someone, you're not doing them any favors by not actually lovingly, but clearly pointing them out. So this is, always through the lens of love and wanting to help people understand that these are learned stories. They're not the truth of who you are. They are patterns of behavior that you've been conditioned into. And that means that you can unlearn them. So we're talking about moving from your learned limitation into your liberation. Okay. So the Wannapreneur is someone who might have been described and often has been described in childhood as too emotional, too sensitive, or got feedback to say, don't be ridiculous. So as in, no, that's not right. So these people are often people that have really, really strong emotional intelligence that they may have grown up in, either families of origin or culture or education systems, whatever, where they've been taught that, no, that's not what's going on. So you're like the pattern spotter, right? Often they will also talk about things like being an empath or being a highly sensitive person. So when I think about a Wannapreneur in the fear state, her emotions make her feeling a strong wave of emotion makes her feel like she's too inconsistent, too emotional, too sensitive, too whatever to get out in the marketplace. And so she will talk about the dreams she has about a business, but actually going out and doing it and exposing her emotional self that she's been taught is not okay. And the wave that she travels feels incredibly vulnerable. The underpinning fear is the fear of being seen, afraid that if she expresses how she really feels, people will feel like she's too much or people will pull away from her. She's afraid of her emotional truth. And often there's patterns of learning that say, when I'm truthful, it breeds conflict or rejection or abandonment. So she will swallow it down and play nice, keep the peace. The nervous system imprint says to her, my emotions need to be suppressed to be safe. And my emotional expression equals danger, rejection, etc. So a Wannapreneur learned limitations show up with things like, I want to build a business so badly, but I just can't make myself do it. So there's often when people come to me, there's like source of frustration. Like they know they've got a gift. They know that they're either deeply spiritual or they're healer, helper people, or they help people spot patterns, but they just cannot seem to get out of their own way. And then they often will say to me, I need to wait until I'm less emotional. I just don't feel right, or I don't feel like I'm in a good space. And I'm always like, maybe the fact that you have this beautiful emotional wave is actually the keys to your soul-fueled, sustainable business queendom. Maybe this is the very thing that you've been taught to fear the most is most often the thing you need to lean into to unlock the freedom in your business. She will also say, every time I show up, I second guess if I'm too much. My feelings are all over the place. No one wants to see me be like up, down, and sideways. Things like I'll start strong with something, but then I'll ghost because I might start on the top of an emotional wave and it feels okay and accessible. And then as soon as I'm lower down, I'm like, oh no, this is the part that I've been taught not to show people. And so there's a real sense of vulnerability. There's also a pattern of like, if I speak my truth, I'm going to upset people. Because often, like I said, it's the empath. They're reading things that and often they're also neurosparkly, not always, but sometimes, or often. And often it's like the other brains in the room are not wired to be so spidey sensey attuned to the energy. And so you might have been taught or have been led to believe that your sense is actually incorrect. So why would you share your sense out there in entrepreneurship land? Because of course that feels vulnerable, because you've been taught that it's not okay to do. So see how these are they're not the truth of who you are. They're not the truth of who you are. That is the most important thing. If you don't get anything else from these episodes, these patterns of voice invisibility, barriers or Achilles heels. I don't like using the word block because that feels like insurmountable. These are just learned stories. And because you've learned them, you can also unlearn them. Okay, the next one is the Clingpreneur. So this is a person that is often a real control freak. So they're trying to keep a semblance of safety and control by like over planning, over scheduling, needing frameworks that they have to grip onto. They're often afraid that if they let go, there's going to be a loss of control or a collapse. They need the perception of safety and they anchor their safety to external circumstances. So things like it has to look and feel a particular way for me to feel safe. And so if something happens that's an external change or impulse or something that you can't control, there's like, this is not familiar and therefore it's dangerous. So the nervous system imprint is familiarity. Geez, sometimes I can't speak. And control equals safety, and intuition and change, being open to being responsive and flexible and flowing, equals risk. Now, the key thing with the Clingpreneur, feel like sometimes when I see this pattern, I talk to clients about it, they think of themselves as like not courageous or not brave. And I always say, I actually think it's more to do with the fact that you've learned that change leads to chaos or change leads to threat. And so they're the people that will often stay in professions that no longer satisfy them, or stay in, like, they've set up a coaching business, they've got to a particular stage, like, maybe you're just doing one-for-one client work, that you can show up, that you're, in inverted commas, good at it. But there's like a niggle underneath it that's like, this is not the fullness of who I want to be and how I want to work in the world, or it's not giving me what I value. So maybe you value freedom or self-expression or whatever, but you just can't unlock this part of you that is seeking to control. So you stay in offers that don't fit. You stay in relationships that don't fit. You stay in business partnerships that don't fit. You stay in, like, you've always had a Facebook group. You hate having a Facebook group. You've opened it 5 years ago, but you can't let anyone down. So then you have to stay and do shit that you don't want to do. And then your entire business is based on something that is like, it's a self-abandonment. So there's a cycle of like, oh, that's just the way that it is. And it's like, it's not the way it has to be. You have choice. So the ways it can show up in business is, what if I let go and regret it? So if I would say to a Clingpreneur, go live on Instagram and just say whatever comes to mind, it's like, no, absolutely not. That is way too uncontrolled an environment. I don't get to edit. I don't get to second guess. I don't get to hold on to exactly how to say it and who to say it to. They're the people that are often like, they want to kind of learn by, like, they want to learn in a way that they can say, here is 5 correct steps, and I know the 5 steps, so I can do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. So they're really they've been taught not to follow their intuition mostly. So what if I let go and regret it? Maybe I'll just stick with what I know. If I follow my intuition and it doesn't work, I'll feel like a fool, because often they've been taught that. Better the devil I know. If you've ever said that, you guarantee you've had a Clingpreneur come out. I've invested too much in this path to walk away. So you know that concept of like sunk, like opportunity. Is it opportunity cost? Don't know if I'm using the right language there, but like, you know, you've spent X amount of money, years, time, energy, etc. This is my identity. I can't let it go. Change feels dangerous to these people. So that is like, for me, the big invitation for a Clingpreneur is to A, connect with intuition, and B, then try little teeny tiny ways that each day you can trust your intuition and lean into it so that you can build this muscle of self-trust over time. You never ever want to blow yourself out of the water and shut down your nervous system by trying to push too hard against these patterns. Overpreneur, this is one of my, like I would say if I had to pick one, this would still be the edge of my Achilles heel. It shows up in visibility. It shows up in offers. It shows up in client circle work, and the way that I continue, wow, I just got like a body sensation then. The way I continue to learn how to be aware and master it is more and more of the energetic and emotional resourcing work before I start a work day. So connecting to myself, connecting to the wild woman, connecting to the soul of my business, and then watching anything that feels adrenalized in my body. So this really shows up like it's a sacral linked imbalance. So it's the not waiting for the pulse of life to say yes or no, actually like churning and burning through things. This is driven by fear of not being enough. It's like an obligated overgiver. So giving from a sense of pressure and obligation rather than generosity. Very uncomfortable with taking rest. Often afraid that if she stops, she'll lose everything. So she keeps going. She keeps being driven by the not enough. Her worth is tied to how much she does, so not who she is. So often, you know, work equals worth, worth equals work. Dangerous sleep. Nervous system imprint is taking her foot off the gas or stillness or just showing up as her full unapologetic self without bleeding herself dry feels very dangerous, and productivity and proving worth feels like safety. Pausing feels like a risk. Rest feels like rejection. So she keeps going, but she doesn't go from joy. She goes from fear that if she stops going, the shoe will drop is the kind of thing that a lot of people in the Overpreneur, like if I stop, then it's going to catch up on me and everything will just fall down like a house of cards kind of thing. And with all of these learned limitations, remember that the way, like the belief systems that we have, or the set points of receivership and being seen and heard and speaking our truth, the set points are like thermostats, right? So these are the, if you want to call, you know, from a somatic kind of lens, these are learned limitations that have given you like the window of tolerance of where you are. So if you're an overpreneur and you've been patterned to being an overgiving, overdoing, the real work is not slapping strategy on top. It's actually connecting to the sacral pulse of life, to joy, to creativity, to taking time out and waiting for your sense, like your body sense, not this brain thing, your body sense to give you the yes, the green light. And that is a really hard pattern to reset when you've been taught that your worth equals work. So here's the thing I hear from overpreneurs and me. I get a rush from saying yes, and then I regret it when I'm drowning in delivery. The busier I am, the more alive I feel until I hit a wall. So often these people will burn out. I don't know how to create pressure without the pressure of a deadline. So I often, this one and the Lackpreneur can get very addicted to the adrenaline of things. If I'm not in overdrive, I feel lazy and worthless. Again, patterning from family of origin mostly. And I can't tell the difference between desire and adrenalized push. And that, again, is a very slippery slope, because if you don't know what the difference between desire and adrenaline, or like drive from adrenaline, is, you're never, ever going to be able to create a life that feels delicious and nourishing and juicy, because desire is the gateway to opening that. If you don't know how to feel and respond to desire, problem. Okay, last one, Lackpreneur. Lackpreneur. So this is a real, this is a fear of literally not being safe. That this is very survival linked. I like to think of them as chasing momentum. It's it's even more adrenalized than the one that we just talked about. So she is terrified that if she slows down, she won't survive. Her head is literally screaming, keep moving, keep creating, keep hustling, because her set point is having always moved from survival and speed and scarcity. And so if you think speed and scarcity equals safety, then grounded presence and switching off from your business is going to feel very dangerous. I see this a lot. Like when I first started my business in 2011, the overwhelming set point out there was this whole boss babe kind of concept. And it's you hustle, you get out there, you put your all in, and I think that we have come a long way with that, but there's also still this, it's the competitive nature that is risen, I was going to say, that rises in a human when we're exposed to the highlight reel of what everybody else is doing, right? So social media is such a great tool in online business. And also, if you've got these parts running the show, absolutely, it can just wake up all of these parts even more. Because if you can, you're sitting on the couch and you're a Lackpreneur and you think, I'm just going to take tonight off and just, maybe have a bath and do a meditation and whatever. And then you make the mistake of getting on your phone and someone on Instagram that you admire or compare yourself to comes up saying, I've just sold out my next course or whatever. Guess what that's going to do? It's going to bring the Lackpreneur on. See, this is why it's not happening for you, because you're thinking about having a bath, and then off we go again. So she says things like, I need to launch now or I'll miss the window. Resting feels like failure. I can't switch off. If I do, my body feels unsafe. The second I pause, the money stops. I don't feel safe unless I'm hustling, so I won't give myself time off. How does it show up in a visibility frame? It shows up in a visibility frame because when you are at an adrenalized set point, there is an awful, grippy, graspy lack energy that is live in your system. So you go out, and even if you were able to put strategy on top and go out and just say you were hired for a speaking event or going to a networking event or making a pitch in a sales conversation, if you've got lack alive in your system, guess where your set point is? So you're just behaving and creating more of the same pattern. So the likelihood is that you'll either repel that person or you'll open the door for non-ideal clients who are at a set point of you need to fix me. So a very, it's a power dynamic or a lack dynamic that it's fed by lack and it continues to create more lack. And so it's no, we don't want to repeat these cycles. We want to break out of them and shift through them, right? So as I said at the beginning of the second part of this 3-part series, these, everyone will have some flavor of these patterns in them. And some of the ways will feel very strong and others will be oh yeah, I don't really do that, or I don't do it at the moment. What I will just repeat is these are patterns of learned limitation. They are not flaws. They are not who you are as a personality. This is not a reason why business will never work for you or a reason why you cannot be seen and heard and recognized as a thought leader, as someone who is creating new pathways, paradigm shifting, leading the way, pioneering. And I will also say that this is not the truth of who you are. And underneath this is this wild woman, or the authentic self with a capital S, if we go back to our internal family systems language, that is absolutely connected to 100% of your power source. And if you were just to allow her to come out and drive the bus a little bit more often, leaning into these edges, then you would be not only free from all of those, the patterns of belonging that are plugged into the power sources outside of you. So you would be turning up as your full self. But that is where wild magnetism comes from. Because I can guarantee people can tune into this podcast and be she is absolutely not my cup of tea. And there's also those of you who every week, and this podcast has had like 4 identity shifts over the time that I've been creating episodes almost every week now, for about 3 and a bit years. But there is still those of you who will turn up and listen every week because there is something about me and my unapologetic truth that resonates with something in you. That can only happen when we turn up as our full selves. If we are turning up with any of these patterns running the show, we are not turning up and resonating with our soulmate clients. We are not speaking our unapologetic truth because there's still parts of us that are trying to pattern, like protect or run interference between being more visible, with having more people looking at us, with trying to keep us protected from the fear of not being loved or not belonging or rejection, like all of those core fears that we talked about. The thing with these is that every single one of these archetypes has a flip side. So I call these the fear frames. And then there's the flip side, which is actually leaning into these and learning how to use simple somatic and emotional and energetic regulation tools will actually help you to reset the thermostat or the set point so that you can become someone who can hold the discomfort or the fear in your body. And also, like, it's not like we're saying the fear goes away. It's about being able to reconnect to the wild woman truths and run your business from that place more often. But also when the fear comes up, which it absolutely will, of course it does, unless you're finished evolving and you're like in a Buddha-like state. So if that's you, beautiful. Congratulations. You can go and sit on a mountaintop. But for the most of us, we are not at enlightenment stage. We are not meant to be delivering our gifts to the world in a way that requires us to sacrifice ourselves, to pretend that we're someone that we're not, to polish, to perfect, to make us more palatable. And so if there's any sense in you that you are feeling like you have to be, it's almost like, I talked about my rules of reality at the first part of this 3-part series, which is you're a genius, you have gifts, you're meant to be delivering them to the world, then you learn conditioning, and now this is a process of unlearning it and leaning into what I call your liberation or freedom frequency. If we can do that more, we become more magnetic, we become more unapologetic, which takes a lot less energy to run a business from your whole, true, unfiltered self than it does from a place of trying to perform. And so if you've got any awareness at all inside of you that says, I can be more visible if I could be more visible if I knew more, I could be more visible if I wasn't so emotional, I could be more visible if, like we asked this in Raw Live, and so many of the answers were really, really telling about visibility kind of barriers underneath it. I could be more visible if I wasn't worried about the male gaze was one of the answers. I could be more visible if my friends and family couldn't see me. I could be more visible if I felt more confident. I could be more visible if I knew that I had something worthwhile to say. And so in those responses, what it's saying is, the reason why I can't turn up as my unapologetic self is because I have a rule about what I need to do to be able to be worth being seen, heard, and recognized. If that feels true in your system, and particularly if it is stopping you from getting your gift out into the world, I just want to reiterate to you that you were born with the gift and a life purpose, and you are part of the health of the collective. And I always think, if you can imagine like a golden thread through all of our lives, leading us to this, unfolding of our life purpose. And if you can then think, for every person that says yes to leaning into the edges, to learning how to share their gifts in the world, every single time that happens, there is a stronger, I can never do this with my fingers, a stronger and stronger, I'm making like a matrix or an energetic lattice with my hands. We have a stronger and stronger collective, because in the end, my gift or genius to do this work in the world, I mean, it's medicine for me first, right? Like you have to take your own medicine. You're always going to go first. You're always on the edge of your own expansion. You better believe that I, have been leaning into edges myself every time I do something in business. And it's medicine for me. But here's the kicker. It is actually not about me and it's not about you. It's about what you can offer the energetic collective so that each individual piece of the puzzle is offered and fits in, or you could make it kind of like a jigsaw, whatever kind of visual speaks to you the most. And that just means that we get to help the people that we are best fit to help. And then that ripples through their lives. And then particularly if you are also someone like doing, healing, helping, coaching, psychology, therapy, counseling, EDMR, like any of those, transformational art forms, just think about all the people that you have already been able to help with the work that you do. And then just think about how many more people you could help and touch and impact and influence positively if you allowed these parts to be. Sorry, that's a very loud truck near my house, so apologies if that came through on the recording. If these parts are the ones that actually show up, how many more people could you impact? Like the ripple of the ripple of the ripple of the ripple, right? So maybe you've helped 5 people so far, or maybe you've helped thousands of people so far. And maybe the next edge of your visibility just tenfolds that, or 2 times that. And then exponentially, every single person you impact energetically influences everyone in their field. So their family, their friends, their clients, if they're also, out there making change in the world. And yeah, when it comes down to it, our work, our gifts, our genius is not about us. It's about who we can help and how we can help. And to do it in a way that does not exhaust us by performing or trying to be someone we're not. Because that, take it from me, is not the answer to a soul-fueled sustainable business. So I hope that has been a helpful level of self-awareness for you. If you are keen to understand more about your archetype, or you want to feel into some of the tools that I share with my clients to shift from the fear frame to the freedom frequency, you can do the quiz at kyliepatchett.com/quiz to get those answers. And as I mentioned, the whole Raw Live experience, which was run last week live for 3 days, is now available with instant access to all of the replays and all of the resources. Inside of that, I share 4 simple somatic, energy and emotional regulation and resourcing tools. I highly recommend, whether you do any of those things or not, that you understand that strategy is only going to get you X amount of progress if you don't also alongside it speak to or actually lean into the energetic, emotional soul piece of your business, because you are not just here to whack a framework or a formula on top of your unique genius and call it a day, because it's not the fullness of who you're meant to be. There is only your way. There's no such thing as the right way to market. There's no such thing as the right way to do business. It's about you energetically aligned to who you are, because we need all of the future humans, the paradigm shifters, the out-of-the-box mad hatters to contribute all the new pathways that we're going to be needing as these systems collapse. So you can get access to Raw Live. I'll put the links in underneath this episode at kyliepatchett.com/raw, ROAR dash live. Probably should have made that URL a bit easier for people. And yeah, I look forward to speaking with you in our next episode. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. If this episode lit a fire in your body, in your business, deep down in your bones, please take a moment to drop a rating and review so more rebels just like you can find us. And don't keep this goodness to yourself. Share it with your disruptive rebel and revolutionary friends who are ready to roar right alongside of you. Until next time, stay wild, stay unapologetic, and stay fucking free.